video. So now I will continue with from wherever I have left it. So Russia has been worried about this phenomena of if at all Ukraine joins NATO. NATO has already come towards in the Eastern Europe, but already there in southern in Turkey on the southern borders of Russia. So they don't want it to come to their own borders, whether it is in Georgia or in Ukraine. These two are the flashpoints there. So, of course, the Americans, of course, there's a clear logic. You might have read that every country is sovereign and it has a right to decide what it wants to do economically, politically, strategically. It's fine. But this is a situation similar to what happened in 1962. What happened in 1962? The Cuban Missile Crisis. As you know, Cuba is a small country, island. It's a small island in just across the Straits of Florida. Cuba was a communist country, still a communist country, and it wanted to set up Soviet Union's missiles targeting US in 1962 under Fidel Castro. US immediately said, no, we will never allow that to happen. Though Cuba was a sovereign country and it has a right to decide what is best for it, US said we will destroy Cuba in an instant if Soviet Union puts its missile after an agreement with Cuba. And it didn't happen. The Cuban Missile Crisis was the flashpoint of the highest tension thing during the Cold War period in 1962. So US said we will attack Cuba if Soviet Union puts its missiles in Cuba because it will endanger its own security. The same thing Russia is saying. If Americans put their nuclear tip missiles in Ukraine, it will endanger their security. Okay, forget that. You can say that was 50 years back in 1962, 60 years back. Coming now closer to presently, now why US and his allies have imposed sanctions on Iran? Why Americans and their allies have imposed sanctions on North Korea? Because these two countries want to develop their own nuclear weapons. Iran because Israel, the American ally, has got nuclear weapons. And North Korea because US has got its nuclear weapons in Japan and South Korea. So, are Japan or not Iran and North Korea not sovereign to decide what is best for them? Why the Americans and the English people have put imposed sanctions on them? So this logic that, of course, logic that Ukraine has a right to decide what is best for it doesn't hold much weight at all. When you see what Americans, this is the power of their soft power. I always say that Americans' hard power is lesser than that of the Russians. Russians have a military, in my opinion, better missiles and better fighter aircraft and better tanks than the Americans. Even Chinese are catching up with the Americans there. But American soft power unrivaled. The power of CNN, the power of BBC. Though they, of course, they have all banned Russia Today, Russian TV channel. Though they talk about freedom of expression, they want to hear only one side of the thing there. As I already said that I am not opposed to war. But we have to understand the reality of the war. What happened in Kosovo? Now US says that unilaterally Russia is taking this action, and this is what the Indian media is also repeating again and again. But what happened? The Americans and the NATO attacked Kosovo, which is again a Slavic country, Kosovo, in 1999 without any approval from the UN Security Council. So who gave them the right to attack Kosovo? So there is no logic at all. War kills people. We have to be against war. We need to strengthen UN. We need to strengthen the global security system. Now this war could have been in conflict. I won't call it as a war because I think that Russia being they don't want to create too much of damage in Ukraine because of their Slavic affinity. And there are other reasons which I will come to it later. The mistake has been done in the 90s. The Americans are gloating. Fukuyama, the American political thinker, wrote in 1992, End of History, the triumphalism. They should have incorporated Russia into the security architecture of Europe, both the security and economic architecture. European Union, because Russia is a European country, European Union should have included Russia and other former Soviet republics. There's nothing wrong in that. You should create an economic interdependency. And NATO, you see, for example, Africans have created OAU, Organization of African Unity, headquarters in Addis Ababa, and want to take control of their own security issues, not the colonial powers like England and France. There is a similar organization in South America. Same thing, Europe must think about its own security. I don't see any reason why US should be the dominant power in Europe. If US, which is an Atlantic power, which has nothing to do with Europe, can head NATO, and naturally Russians will be aghast at that. Everybody has their own security interests in that. NATO should have been disbanded, and there should have been a greater role for Russia in the security architecture of Europe. Of course, UN is defunct. There is a veto power. People say that everybody is against Russia in Security Council, in the General Assembly, in UNHRC. Russia has vetoed it, but they again conveniently forget how many Security Council resolutions have been passed in the Security Council against Israel, the staunchest of ally of US. And US is the only country has vetoed it many times. Historically, it has happened even last year also there. And this is the problem with the Security Council there, the veto power and all those inequalities inherent in the present Security Council. Now coming to India's position, I support what the position taken by the government. The reason is you are caught between devil and deep sea. You can't do anything about it. Simply because Russia is India's biggest military supplier and a very reliable military partner. Unlike US, which doesn't want to give the latest military technology into India, Russia always has shared, and even today is sharing. Some of you may remember S-400 anti-missile defense system, which is being purchased by India, and Americans are threatening sanctions on India for buying this. This is the best anti-missile defense system in the world, and India is buying it, and Indian people are being trained in Moscow to operate this system right now there. We can talk about the flight submarines, we can talk about the tanks, we can talk about the latest fighter aircraft. All Russia is ready to sold to India and ready to sell to its India. And how many times Soviet Union and Russia vetoed in favor of India when Americans and the British brought resolutions against India in the Security Council over Kashmir. And we cannot also forget the 1971 help. Without that, India could not have divided Pakistan. So, taking the past and present and the future into account, we have to stay neutral. And another important geostrategic reason is, in the Security Council, out of the 15 members, 11 voted in favor of the American resolution. Russia vetoed it, and 3 countries abstained. What are those 3 countries? China, Pakistan, and UAE. So now China, understandable. So Americans are pushing the China-Russia axis, and because of China's closeness with Pakistan, Russia is also getting closer to Pakistan. 3 years back, they have removed the ban on military sales to Pakistan, and it's a coincidence when Russia announced that conflict in Ukraine. On the same day, after 1988, the first ever visit of an Pakistani Prime Minister, Mr. Imran Khan, happened to Moscow. But that was a coincidence there. So if India does not want, if India voted with the Americans against the Russians, obviously the military collaboration would have come to an end, because Putin is very serious about it. He, at whatever may be the cost, he has declared it also, Russia will not allow Ukraine to become part of NATO, because it will once for all very severely endanger Russian security with American missiles hardly 500 kilometers from Moscow, which will not give them any time to react to an American attack in the future there. And India does not want this axis, Russia, China, Pakistan axis. We have to defeat that also. So taken all that into mind, this has been done. Yes, we could have been more proactive in evacuation of our students, about which a lot of things are happening in the media. You are watching all the big coverages, etc. I don't want to talk about it. So these issues have been going on, as I said, for the last 15 years. So as I said, the eastern part of the developed part of Ukraine is heavily Russian speaking and industrialized. So you can see this river, Don River, and one of the tributaries is Donetsk. So that's why this eastern part is of Ukraine is known as Donbas region. So this region has majority, almost 85-90% of the people are Russian speaking. Even in Kharkiv, majority people speak Russian. So this Donbas region is Donetsk basin, that's why short known as Donbas, has been under the has been separated from Ukraine in 2014 on. There have been fighting going on in the last 10 years. And there have been agreements for a ceasefire, 2014 Minsk agreement, 2015 Minsk agreement. People who talk about Russian shelling, which is again deplorable, condemnable, do not talk about the daily barrage of that Ukraine has been doing in Donbas region for the last 10 years, killing thousands and thousands of people. Under the Minsk agreements brokered by France and Germany, which Ukraine is also a signatory, and the two breakaway republics, Lugansk and Donetsk, are also signatories. They have to sign they have to immediately go for ceasefire. But since 2014, there has been no ceasefire. There have been daily fighting, shelling on the big cities has been done by Ukraine. And unfortunately, the Western media has never talked about all those things. Neither the security aspect, what they are talking, just a one-point agenda. War kills, war will definitely, but Russia, in my opinion, has been taking enough precaution to reduce the damages, both to the infrastructure and to the people. But war will kill. If there are 100 Ukrainians killed, there will be 20 Russians also will be killed. So now what is going to happen? So I think Kharkiv will fall. Kharkiv, as I said, is a majority. It's economically they are closer to Russia. All the raw material supplies, the market, all with Russia rather than to Ukraine. Mariupol, a small city which is part of the Donetsk region, but which has been control of Ukraine, will also fall in couple of days. So I don't think Russia will create all this into separate republics. I don't think, and probably the one another reason why Russia is not very aggressive in capturing Kiev is they don't know what to do with Zelensky. Zelensky, they thought that he will run away and there will be a power vacuum and they can put some pliable person in temporarily in charge of Kiev and then conduct elections within 6 months and say now we have brought back democracy and all that. But Zelensky is a elected leader. So what to do with him? He has refuses to flee. So that is probably the Russians don't know what to do with Zelensky there. Will they kill him? Then it will be a long-term problem for them that they have killed elected president of Ukraine. But in my opinion, something finally there will be division of Ukraine. That's what this is what you call de jure, not sorry, de facto, not de jure division. The Kiev and all the Russian-speaking areas of eastern Ukraine will be probably a separate republic. They will announce it, and the more agricultural, backward, more Ukrainian speaking, and more Catholic Western Ukraine border will with under capital under Lviv on the borders with Poland. There will be a separate country. This is what I think right now things are moving towards. Probably you'll in another week or so things will be more clearer. So my opinion, Russia slowed down its advances mainly because of two reasons. One is they don't want too much of damage because they want to rebuild. They don't get anything out of destroying Ukraine. Like Americans have destroyed the Iraqi infrastructure and then gave contracts to the American companies to rebuild Iraq and pocketed billions and billions of dollars. So Russia doesn't want that, and as I said, the very close historical affinity. They are same people, so they don't want any long-term damage. So that's why. The second thing is what to do with Zelensky. Probably now, since he refuses to run away, but Americans, as you can see, Anglo-Saxons who have been asking Ukraine to join NATO, they have not come forward to defend Ukraine because they are not Anglo-Saxons. right? So there is no reason why they should defend the Slavic Eastern Orthodox Church following Ukrainians. So they have been left to face their fate. So this is a tragedy when big powers do not follow whatever they have promised there. So this unfortunate thing will be, in my opinion, once capturing, after capturing Kiev, already today morning Putin has announced a temporary ceasefire for the evacuation of people from all the affected places, Kharkiv, Kiev, Mariupol and all those places. And I think in a week or so, probably 10 days, once a Kiev falls, Russia will announce a permanent ceasefire. And this, in the long term, this is what I expect, because this two parts of Ukraine, with the dividing line between being the Dnieper river and Kiev on the Dnieper river, will be the fault line. And some other this Americans have been saying this is nothing new. One famous American political scientist in the 90s has said that Poland and Ukraine border will be the new fault line, because that's where Catholic and the Protestant religions end and the Eastern Orthodox churches start. As far as the Catholics and Protestants are concerned, Eastern Orthodox Church is for them as bad as Islam. Uh, so they don't consider them as even as Christians at all. So the fault lines are very, very clear. Now the fault lines will shift from from what the Americans say used to say, from the boundaries of Ukraine and Poland towards the Dnieper River. With as I said, the western parts allying themselves with the more closely with the Americans, and the eastern part closely allying with the Russians. That this is a tragedy, unfortunately, of people there, and this could have been eminently avoidable. But any future agreement for unification of Ukraine, including the Donbas region, depends upon Ukraine giving the security guarantees to Russia that they will never ever join Ukraine, because they are been enjoying a lot of economic benefits of aligning with Russia. Russia has been giving them gas at a cutthroat price. Why should Russia give them? That should be done on market principles, because they are close allies and similar people. Russia has been giving that. So Russia feels that the successive Ukrainian presidents have been ungrateful for all the help, economic help, which has been provided by Russia. So these are the things which, unfortunately, all these things are not being told by media, which, as I said, slavishly sings the the BBC tune. The mistakes of the 90s are coming back to haunt us, where the Russia should have been part of the political and security architecture of an united Europe. The differences between France and Germany created always conflict in Europe, including the world wars. But once they resolved it and became created EU, then there has been peace in Western Europe, and comes along with peace comes prosperity. This is what we should also, but by portraying Russia as an enemy, the Americans are doing a great disservice to Europe and pushing Russia closer and closer to China. There won't be any world war. World war will not happen at all. These are all skirmishes. I won't even call it as a war. It is a conflict in Ukraine rather than a war. um, let's see that what the how the situation will unfold. But I think, in my opinion, 1 week, 10 days, Kiev will fall and Russia will then announce a ceasefire, and then they'll allow the diplomacy to talk. Germany and France, as usual, will take the lead. But unfortunately, Americans won't allow this security guarantees will be given by any Ukrainian government to Russia about the expansion of NATO. So the tensions will, unfortunately, will remain. Okay, thank you. Let us, I'll put another video on the elections later today.